And welcome to this episode of the UFO Show here on the Area 51 Sports Network, brought to you by bet99.com. Make sure to head over to area51sportsnet.com/betting. There you can find a link for a bet back bonus on your first deposit up to $500. So, Andy, we haven't done this in about a month. Last time we did it, it was all about the World Cup. I think that, we kind of came to the conclusion that Argentina or France was going to win it. We also had Brazil in there, but just thoughts on the World Cup quickly.
Yeah, I mean that final game was pretty good. World Cup thoughts? I'm not sure. I kind of expected France to win, but I think they were dealing with a flu or something like that. It seems to be going around. So a little bit unfortunate they weren't at their best, but still one of the best games I've ever watched. And the people who are more hardcore into soccer than I am are talking about that one being one of the best final games ever. So overall, good tournament. I think there were some disappointing teams, some teams that surprised a little bit. I don't think many people saw Morocco getting as far as they did, but you know it is what it is, right? So good for Argentina and Messi, and if somebody had to win, I'm happy to see that he won his finally got his World Cup.
I think that Messi getting the World Cup win kind of cements him in that greatest of all time category. Like, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, with Ronaldo, there's a lot of stuff that comes out in public, like a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of walking, basically throwing Manchester United under the bus. But it's like when it comes to Messi, how many times have you heard negative things about Messi?
Well,
Like
exactly
it's
right.
just,
Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
it's like, and then like he had to leave Barcelona. Like that was kind of a messy, like that was kind of like not a great situation, but like everybody at Barcelona basically sent him off like a hero at the end.
Yeah, and I think we should mention too, since we're talking about World Cup and soccer players, that Pele passed away this morning. So probably the first real global soccer superstar. Rest in peace to Pele.
Yes, unfortunately that was before my time, but I know that my dad can is remembers watching him play. So my dad has told me quite a lot about Pele over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump into the reason we're here, which is some of the bets that we have going on. We're going to start with the World Juniors, um, the Canada Austria game today. Now, if you are uh, watching the World Juniors right now, Czechia and Sweden are in overtime, and that game has been absolute chaos. Uh, Czechia is this is the best Czechia team that they have sent maybe ever, and that includes the teams that they sent back to back that won back to back gold in like the in 2000 2001. Like this is a ridiculous strong Czechia team. We already saw them beat Canada. Um, they're playing Sweden and they're pushing them to uh, overtime, and they look like they're going to win that group. So that's a team that when we were previewing it and look like when people were previewing and looking at it, they're like, okay, this team has pretty good players. Yuri Kulich, David Juracek, and then Thomas Suknik in the goal, who's just been like on another world. Like, but this Czechia team is special, and people need to start paying attention to it.
Yeah, no, I've been really impressed by them. Slovakia's impressed me too. They beat, excuse me, I think it was the United States yesterday. So, I wasn't too sure how this tournament was going to shake out without Russia. It always seems it's Russia, Sweden, Canada are kind of the top three, and then without Russia, I wasn't really sure, how it was going to play out. If we were going to see a bunch of blowouts or a team with like one win that gets into the semifinals or something like that. But it's good to see Czech and Slovakia step up and put up some decent competition. And like you said, I think Czechia is probably, if not their best team ever, the World Juniors and in the conversation. And I think what impressed me about Czechia is the depth of their squad. Like they always seem to have a 2 or 3 top players, but it seems everybody on their roster is legitimately can keep up with Sweden and Canada and stuff. So I've been really impressed by them.
And we do have a final in that game, so we'll give you a second in case you're watching it. Team Sweden has won in OT, which is huge for Canada. And Jonathan Lekkerimäki was the one who got the OT assist. So
There
for
you
all the
go.
Canuck
Vancouver.
fans, yes. So if you're a Vancouver Canuck fan, first off, it's great that Lekkerimäki is producing, but second, getting an opportunity in overtime in such a crucial game really tells you how much faith the team has in him. Yeah. So to break that down, kind of in the IIHF world, 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime and shootout win. So because Sweden won in overtime, Canada now has an opportunity to theoretically win the group. If Czechia had won in regulation, there was no chance. If Czechia had won in overtime, there was like little to no chance. But now that Sweden won it, if Canada can run the table with 2 regulation wins, they can technically win the group. So that's big if you're hoping for Canada to, be ranked number 1 in the group. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. So let's talk about that Canada-Austria game today. Now, this is a very odd one. Remember, Austria has already been blown out in this tournament by Sweden. Canada's coming off their 11-2 win from last night against Germany. And the last time Canada played Austria, they won 11-2, and that was the Connor Bedard 4-point game. But that one didn't count because that was the winter World Juniors that got canceled. Yeah, so... And a side note to that game also happened on December 28th. So Connor Bedard has 7 goals and 3 assists on December 28th, games played on December 28th at the World Juniors, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, Connor Bedard, yeah, he's just a special player, I guess. Maybe he'll get drafted. Who knows, right?
He might be a second-round pick.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the reason why I said this is bizarre is because this is a hockey game and the line is minus 10.5 for Canada.
So they got to win by 11 goals. That seems like I see why the line is that big. I think Austria lost 11 or 12-0 to Sweden. Obviously, Canada, like you said, with Bedard and Shane Wright and Fantilli, who's probably going to go second overall behind Bedard. I mean, maybe he goes third, but he's in the conversation for second or third overall. Canada's so much more talented, deeper at every position, but 11 goals seems like a lot. I'd probably take Austria to cover 10.5, to be honest. I don't think there's a chance in hell they win this game, but if they lose by 8 or 9 goals, that's still a complete blowout, but you do get the Austria cover.
Now, what's great about this line is that because it's 10.5 is the spread, there is literally no money line because you can't it's almost impossible to produce a money line off of a 10.5 spread hockey game. So
Yes.
that is something that is if you can find a money line on Austria, that might be just worth $2 to throw on because you never know. And Canada's probably going to win this game. I don't think they're going to win by 10.5 by 11 goals. And that's why, when you look at the spread, both of them are in the minus. So it's minus 109 for Canada at minus 10.5 and minus 123 for Austria at plus 10.5. If you can get a money line, you never know in these tournaments. Slovakia pulling off upsets, Czechia pulling off upsets. Austria is a little bit different because they don't have that necessary star power that these other teams do, these high draft picks that the other teams do. But, if you find a money line that will pay you like out, I don't know, $100 for a $2 deposit. I would do that every day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Austria has a chance to win this game whatsoever. But like you said, 10 goals is a lot. So to win by 11 is really like you got to keep pushing the whole game to try to win by 11 goals, right? And I think the problem with some of these minnows when they play Canada or Sweden or something is that, if Canada gets up like 9-0 after 2 periods, what incentive is there for them to keep pushing, going full out to try to score more goals, especially when they still have to play their back to back here and need to save up some energy. So you don't want to get anybody hurt for that match on New Year's Eve with Sweden. You know, I think if they're up like 8 or 9-0, they kind of put it in cruise control and just sort of bleed out the clock, which is why the 11 goal spread seems, a little bit high to me.
And one note about last night's game, the reason that Canada got 11 goals is because 7 of them came on the power play, with 4 of them coming on a 5-minute major.
There
So
you
that
go.
shows you just how hard it is to win. And they didn't even win by 11 goals. They scored 11 goals. So if you put money on a 10.5 spread last night, you would have lost because they won 11-2. So
Yeah,
like that just
exactly.
shows you how hard it is to win by 11 goals. Like, Austria lost to Sweden giving up 11 goals, but they didn't lose by 11 as well. Like, so you have to put that into perspective that these, your team can score 11 goals, but you also have to shut out the other team, essentially. And to the point of, running up the score, this is international hockey as well, which does rely on goal differential a lot, especially because, so if like Sweden beats Czechia in tonight in overtime, and then Canada beats Sweden, and all of the and because Czechia beat Canada, like that could, well, actually, the goal differential probably won't play a factor because head to head, but like it gets very complicated if every team has like the same amount of points. Like each team has beat each other in like a three, so goal differential does play a factor in that case. But today, yeah, I don't see Canada. I don't see Canada going out and putting up 11. I see Bedard having a big game because he's literally a cheat code at this point. Like, but I don't see Canada winning by 11.
Yeah, I mean, like the goal differential thing does matter, like you said, but with the results we've seen so far with Sweden and Czechia, I think it's going to be more so the goal differential head to head between Sweden, Czechia, and Canada. So beating a team 13-0 doesn't really help that much. I mean, maybe you can make the argument because Sweden beat Austria 11-0, you want to try to up that. But again, I don't see the point in Canada when they're up 7, 8, 9-0 and playing Bedard 20 minutes and playing Shane Wright every second shift of the third period. You know what I mean? So I don't see how the game gets so out of control unless, like you mentioned, there's a 5-minute power play where they score 5 goals or something. So yeah, I don't know. We kind of beat this to death, but I think we're in agreement. Take Austria to cover 10.5 goals, but there's not a chance in hell they actually win the game.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump over to the NFL here. We got a interesting. We have an interesting game today in the Dallas Cowboys versus the Tennessee Titans. Now, I don't know if what's going on with Bet99 here, but they have the Dallas Cowboys at minus 1,000 and the Tennessee Titans at plus 955. So you can place that bet in Canada right now. I know that the Tennessee Titans are down bad with, having essentially no quarterback. And the Dallas Cowboys are very good, and they are competing for you know, that spot at the top of the NFC East. But to have the Tennessee Titans as a 13.5 underdog, when they're still in a playoff race is a little bit confusing on my part. Like I get it. They're missing a ton of players, but like this is the NFL. And you, I don't see that situation. I don't see them losing by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I disagree. I mean, Tennessee has nothing to play for in this game. The only way they're making the playoffs is if they win their division, and they play Jacksonville next week for the division title, which is why they're resting guys like Derrick Henry, Malik Willis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't like this game is like a preseason game basically for Tennessee. They have nothing to play for. They're going to play all their backups. I expect them to play very bland defensive coverage, not give any film away that Jacksonville can use for next week. So I like Dallas minus 13.5 here. Like you said, the Cowboys still have an outside shot at bringing down Philadelphia for the division. So they still have something to play for. They obviously want to get as high up in the playoff seeding as they can and try to play a weaker team, whether it be Washington or Green Bay, Detroit, whoever gets into the playoffs there. So Tennessee, I don't want to say they're going to try to lose this game, but they're not going to make any effort to win it.
Yeah, I just always have that, like, when you say, like, when you're talking about playing backups and stuff, like I just don't necessarily, fall into the. I know that, like, Tennessee is the underdog in this game. Like, that's not, like, I'm not saying that they're gonna, annihilate Dallas, but there's something about, like, late in the season playing your backups, and these backups, like, trying to compete for contracts in a lot of cases, that we see players just have, like, career games out of nowhere when they're given this opportunity. And especially because they're playing the Dallas Cowboys. So that all of it's a single game night. It's Thursday night. They're playing one of the most popular teams in the NFL. All the eyes are going to be on them. I just feel like it's a dangerous game to say that they have no shot just because they're playing the backups.
Yeah, I mean, you do make a good point, right? Like a lot of the guys who are playing today are probably fringe roster guys, and they're playing for a contract either next year with Tennessee or somewhere else, right? So this is their opportunity to get on the field for an NFL game, and for many of them, it's probably the most they'll ever get playing time in a regular season game. So, um, I still don't see Tennessee winning or covering the spread, but I mean, Adam does make a good point in that, you never know if somebody has the game of their life here because it's their one opportunity, right? So, I mean, I don't hate if you really wanted to just play the odds and put some money on Tennessee. I think you said they're plus 1,000, but um, you know, it'd be a really big surprise to me if Tennessee manages to win this game or cover the spread.
So let's jump over to, we're going to just talk about games that have playoff implications here. The Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears are eliminated from the playoffs at the moment, but Detroit very much in it at 7-8. They need a lot of help in order to, make the playoffs, but they're at minus 250. Chicago's at plus 220, and then the Lions at 6.5. Do you think that this is just a game that Detroit, well, it's a game that Detroit has to win, but do you think this is a game that Detroit just lays it on Chicago?
I do. I mean, Chicago is not a good team. Detroit started, I think they were 1-6, and since then, they're on a hot streak. I think they've won like the last 6 of the last 7 games, or 7 of the last 8, whatever it works out to. Like you said, they're playing for their playoff lives, so I expect Detroit to come out ready to play. And like I said, Chicago is probably the worst team in the league if it's not Houston. So I don't really give Chicago any chance here.
But, you also have to look at the fact that it is the Lions who are playing, and they seem to have this tendency that when they need to win games against, like, poor opponents, that they just lose them. Like, it seems like a very Detroit Lions type of thing for them to lose this game as well.
It does seem, well, I mean, yes, historically you're right. Detroit always manages to figure out a way to lose, but like I said, the second half of the season here, they have, I don't want to say changed their fortune, but they figured it out and figured out something where, they seem to be winning games, and when they get a lead, they seem to keep pushing to make sure that they, figure out the way to close out the game, and they don't give up. They keep they go for the kill shot, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. So I like Detroit. Like I said, Chicago's terrible. The only thing I will say, if you're into fantasy, I love the Justin Fields matchup versus the Detroit Lions defense. Their defense is still not that good, and Justin Fields has this ability to run around, throw on the run, escape the pocket. I could see him having a big fantasy game, but Chicago winning this, I don't think is going to happen.
So huge game in the AFC: Miami versus New England. This Miami right now 8-7. They hold down the 7 spot. Patriots 7-8. They hold down the 8 spot, so they'd be out of the playoffs. This game could, if Miami wins, the Patriots are done. So this is a must-win game for the Patriots. They're at -155. The Dolphins are at +135. And important to note, no Tua in this game. It will be Teddy Bridgewater, probably for the playoffs even, because Tua's in that concussion protocol. And, I don't see a world where he's cleared to come back anytime this year, just based off the fact that he's had multiple concussions and been out for long periods of time already this season.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to think about this game because, like you said, the Dolphins are playing Bridgewater. They've lost, I think, 4 of their last 5 or 4 of their last 6, something like that. They're not playing well. They've given up some bad losses, like losing to Green Bay last week was not great for them. And now they're really in a fight for their playoff lives here. Like, a month ago, it seemed like they were a sure thing for the playoffs. And now it's, not quite 50-50, but there's a legitimate chance that they miss. New England's battling for their playoff life. Like you said, they need to win out and get some help to get in here. So, all that said, I still believe in the Dolphins. I still think that with Tyreek Hill and Waddle at receiver and some of the defensive players they have, they're the better team on paper, despite using a backup quarterback. So I'd play the Dolphins on those. I think you said it was +155.
Dolphins are at +135.
135, yeah. So that's good odds to me. Like I said, I think the Dolphins are the better team, even with the backup quarterback. So I would bet the Dolphins.
So let's jump over here to another massive game, divisional game: Carolina Panthers at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is if Tampa wins, I believe that they clinch the division. Yeah, I believe that's how it works in this scenario. But who would have guessed that we would be in week 17 or whatever week we are in right now, and the Carolina Panthers would be knocking on the door of the division after firing their coach, dropping Mayfield, trading trading Christian McCaffrey. Like, it's pretty remarkable to watch how they've fought back this year. They are the underdogs at +150 with Tampa Bay at -170 on the money line. But I'm going to go with, I know it's dumb to bet against Tom Brady, but I just feel like this Carolina team can get the job done.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think it speaks more to how bad this NFC South division is that, whoever wins this is probably going to be 8-9, maybe 9-8. Not any good teams. The Falcons suck. Panthers suck. Bucks suck. I actually like your odds here as well to take Carolina. I mean, I know they're playing Tom Brady, but if you've watched any Bucks games lately, the Bucks look terrible. Their defense can't make a stop. Brady, if you get any semblance of pressure in the pocket, he panics and makes dumb throws. He can't move out of the pocket. So I do think Carolina has enough to win this game. So I like that bet as well.
We'll finish up with just a couple more games here. Green Bay at Minnesota. Green Bay is -180 fighting for their playoff lives. Minnesota's at +160. I mean, outside of positioning, they don't really have much to play for. Do you think this is a game that Minnesota kind of takes off, or is it like we have the chance to, put the final sword in our division rivals that's been, beating us for years and years and years? So we're just gonna put it to them.
Yeah, I think that line is too big. Minnesota plus 160, Green Bay minus 180. That seems high to me. I'd probably call this more of an even money type 50-50 bet. Minnesota still has an outside shot, I guess, at the one seed, depending on what Philadelphia does here the next couple weeks. Green Bay is obviously playing for their playoff life. They need to win out here, and they got embarrassed in week one versus Minnesota. Big matchup here for me is Justin Jefferson. Last time the Packers tried to play zone and didn't shadow him, and first half I think he had 150 something yards and 2 touchdowns, and then the second half when they switched to play man coverage, he had 3 catches for 28 yards, no touchdowns. So I like the odds here with the Vikings. Like I said, I think it's probably 50-50 either way who wins this game, but plus once. I think you said 160 for the Vikings to win. I'd like that bet.
Another big game. Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Vikings on this because I just don't see them. I see them doing everything they can to kick Green Bay out of the playoffs, just out of spite.
Yeah.
Other big game, the New York Jets versus the Seattle Seahawks. This is a massive game for both sides. Seahawks and Jets are both at 7-8. They're on the bubble. So the Seahawks are in a little bit of a more difficult situation, I would say, just because Washington and the New York Giants have that stupid tie, which is basically just like screws everything up in the when you're trying to like do scenarios. But yeah, this is if you're a Seahawks fan, it's kind of like you're playing with borrowed time at this point. I feel like the fact that you're 7-8, and you're playing in Seattle, I don't see like this is the Seahawks, so it's very hard to say they're gonna win, but I don't see I don't see a scenario where they come out flat and they blow this game at home.
Yeah, this is an interesting game for me because, both teams are kind of out of the playoff race, but not officially. Both teams, I think their quarterbacks have a lot to play for. Obviously, Geno Smith, first half of the season, was a borderline MVP candidate. He's kind of regressed to, more so what people expected from Geno Smith going into the season. Seahawks owning that Broncos pick is probably going to be top 5. So, there's a decent chance that the Seahawks could get one of those quarterbacks, Stroud or Bryce Young. So I think Geno has a lot to play for to prove that he, one, is the starter next year and, deserves a big contract, whether it's in Seattle or somewhere else. And then on the Jets side, Mike White is going to make another start. It seems pretty clear the Jets are done with Zach Wilson as their QB of the future. So can Mike White prove enough here the next couple weeks that maybe the Jets, address other areas of need on their team and ride with Mike White next year? It makes it an interesting game when both quarterbacks are kind of playing for jobs. So if I had to make a prediction here, I like the Seahawks at home. I just think that they have more to play for in terms of a home win. Geno Smith, finally getting this opportunity to be a starter full time. To be honest, it's the New York Jets. I've never really sold on the Jets being a good team because they've been so bad for so long. So I'd go with the Seahawks.
Yeah, and you got Geno Smith potentially, knocking out the team that drafted him in to make the playoffs. I don't know. It's just like, yeah. And also, side note on that Seahawks pick, if I'm the Seahawks and, there's like 3 or 4 quarterbacks that you might consider in that place, I would definitely be calling around if I have the 2nd or 3rd overall pick and seeing if I can get a massive package just to drop down to like 6 or 7, because, we've seen these massive trade deals go down for like to move up like 1 spot in the NFL draft. So that's also something to watch, especially because you're going to have that first round pick as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a decent chance that the Seahawks have 2 top 10 picks, right? So, like you said, there is an opportunity for them to move back potentially. I mean, you have to think the Texans are going to take a quarterback probably at number 1 overall. The Colts are in that conversation for probably a team that needs to take a quarterback. Chicago, I don't see taking a quarterback. You know, Atlanta, depending where they finish, could take a QB. There's a few different options for trade backs. So yeah, it's kind of tough to say until we see where everybody slots in officially where they pick. But the Seahawks are definitely a team that I think if they can see enough here from Geno the next couple weeks, can take that top 5 pick they got from Denver and move back to get more draft capital and address other areas of their team.
So last game that we'll talk about this week. This is a pick'em. It's potentially a preview of the AFC final, the Buffalo Bills versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this is massive because this is playoff implications. Both teams are in, but it's who gets that bye, which is massive. Like you want that bye 100% going into the playoffs. So yeah, like I said, it's a pick'em. -110 for Buffalo, -105 for Cincinnati. It's the favorite, is Buffalo, but they're a favorite at -0.5 on the spread. So where do you see this one going?
Yeah, this one's pretty much a pick 'em. Like you said, the Bengals have come on strong here. The last I want to say half, like basically since week 2 or 3 when they started out kind of slow. They've won 7 in a row. Conversely, Buffalo's won 6 in a row. So probably the two hottest teams right now in the NFL that are good, I should say, two hottest good teams playing each other. I still don't trust the Bengals offensive line as much as I should. Buffalo has some good pass rushers. They have a good secondary. And I think that Josh Allen's a better quarterback than Joe Burrow. So all that said, I'd probably go with Buffalo here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Buffalo. I don't see a scenario where, like, I see a scenario where Cleveland or Cincinnati can win. But I feel like this is Buffalo's year. Like, I feel like this is the year that they're finally gonna break that streak. I know that in the early season there was a lot. You were talking a lot about the Ravens, but there's something there. Just the way that this has played out, it just feels like you know Buffalo is finally going to get that Super Bowl that they deserve, and I think that they're going to win this week and then be able to essentially have 2 weeks of rest because they'll rest their entire team next week as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the AFC right now, I think the three best teams are pretty clearly the Bills, Chiefs, and Bengals. Like you mentioned, that's why it's so big for whoever gets that 1 seed and the first round bye. Excuse me. Like you said, not only do they get an extra week of rest, but means you don't have to play the 2-3 matchup in the divisional round, which would at this point in time probably be Kansas City, Cincinnati, right? So anytime you can play one fewer game and one fewer really good opponent, I think that definitely helps you. So yeah, I think Buffalo, like you said, Buffalo's probably the Super Bowl favorite right now. I'm sure we'll talk about this in January on our next show, but I still really like Baltimore to come out of the AFC. But like you mentioned,
Even
if
with
Buffalo,
Lamar basically walking on one leg.
well, here's the thing about Lamar Jackson is that the Ravens are 10-5. They're pretty much assured to get into the playoffs here. I am looking at the standings. Excuse me. I don't really see any other threat for them not to get in. So I do wonder if when they officially clinch, if they give Lamar Jackson some more rest. And the thing about Lamar Jackson is that he's a matchup nightmare depending on the team, right? So like I don't think he would be a great matchup versus a team like Kansas City, who seems to have some smaller, faster players on defense. But Buffalo's a team that's traditionally struggled with the scrambling quarterbacks. So if it is Baltimore Buffalo in the playoffs, I would like Baltimore in that type of matchup, right? So like I said, we'll have to see what the matchups are and how they shake out, and then we can dig into it a bit deeper. But I'm still not writing off the Ravens.
Yeah, it's always, Lamar Jackson is so dangerous that he can will his team to victory, and it's kind of hard to bet against him most of the time.
Exactly.
So before we wrap up, any final thoughts on the betting world or what's going on in the world of sports?
Yeah, the I know Bet99 took down their World Junior futures, but you know, uh, going into the tournament, I thought it was Canada's to lose, and based off what we've seen, I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. So if you can get some decent odds on a team like Sweden or United States, I would be very interested in putting some money on that because Canada's goaltending, the first game obviously wasn't great. Their defense wasn't great. They look like a vulnerable team. So I guess if I had some advice, it'd be shop around and see if you can get United States or Sweden on a good future bet.
And to answer that, see if you can get Czechia on a bet. That would be my advice. At least Czechia to make the gold medal game. I
Yeah.
think that's a bet that you should definitely look at. Okay, well, thank you for once again tuning in to the UFO show here on the Area 51 Sports Network. Make sure to head over to Bet99 Sportsbook. There you can find all of all of the bets that we've been talking about today. For Andy, I'm Adam, and thank you once again for watching.